Morning, Spencer. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Ed. I'm very well. How are you?
Really good as well, thank you. So, once again, I wanted to get some time in our diaries to chat to you about a specific topic that I'd love to hear your thoughts on and that I know other people can learn a thing or two from as well. And it's all about knowing when to say yes and no, basically. I know that you've previously talked a lot about the importance of knowing when to say yes and when it is the right time to say no or yes to certain projects that you take on. But can you elaborate on this a bit more, please?
Yeah, by all means, I can certainly try anyway. Um, so for me, I think you often hear people saying, "Oh, sorry, I didn't have time for that," or "I just ran out of time." And I think that's a pretty poor excuse. And that's not to say I've never used it, but I think it's a pretty poor excuse because I can't remember there being a time when there wasn't 24 hours in a day. So we've all got the same amount of time. It's just how we use it. So it's not that we've run out of time. We haven't prioritized our time. So I think that's the first thing to manage is, whenever anyone says they didn't have time, they did have time. We all have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that's not an excuse. The excuse is I didn't prioritize my time properly. So I think it's getting that mindset into the right frame of mind to actually work out where the issue is. It's not the time, it's the prioritization. And then it becomes more about working out how you prioritize your time. So I remember a long time ago being told um, you can make more money, but you can't make more time. So spend it wisely. And
Mm.
that still sticks with me to this day. It's it's the most valuable thing we have is time. It's more valuable than any of the money we've got because, as I say, you can make more money. So you have to really pick and choose what you say yes and no to. But you need to have a formula to work out what to say yes and no to. So um, I think there's a risk if you try and do too much of not doing anything properly, or even not doing it at all.
Mm.
Um, and I think well, a trick I use, as I say, I'm not trying to pretend I'm perfect in all this. You have to stick to it as well, and I don't always necessarily stick to it. But a trick I use is to work out what your hourly rate is.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how you work it out. It doesn't matter if it's, the business makes this much money. So if I divide that by, every day in the year and every hour that I work in the year, that's what I'm worth, or whether that's what I get paid as a salary, or however you work it out. But have an idea of what your worth is at the moment. And then every time you look at a project, think, is this a project that I should be doing? Or could I perhaps delegate it to someone else, or perhaps do I need to hand it up to someone else because I don't have the skills at the moment? So,
Mm.
another thing that we talk about quite often is, and these are sort of figurative amounts, but is this a £10, £100, or £1,000 an hour job? Now, if you happen to be worth £100 an hour and you get asked to do a £10 an hour job, that's just a waste of time and money, because you could pass that on to someone that can do a £10 an hour
Yeah.
job. You can then go and do a £100 an hour job, and you're £90 better off. Likewise, if you get asked to do £1,000 an hour job, it probably isn't going to take you an hour if you're at £100 an hour skill level. So maybe you need to go and get some training, or maybe you need to go and ask for some help with that project, or just hand that project onto someone else that does have those skills, so that you don't try and maybe spend 3 or 4 hours doing it and then still not get it right, and you've wasted 3 or 4 hours of your time. So I think it's just understanding your value, and then it becomes easier to say yes or no to different projects.
It's really good. And it kind of leads me to the point about you often mention the yes if mantra, which, to be honest, before you, I hadn't heard before. So can you talk a bit more about what that means and where that comes from?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it. It's a Walt Disney quote,
Mm.
as in from the man himself rather than from one of his films. But he was asked, can we build Disneyland? And he said yes if someone else pays for it. And it's always about, you can do pretty much anything. So the example I always use when I'm talking to salespeople is, when they say, can we do this? I say, look, we can do anything. If a client says, can you put an advert on the moon? Well, yes, we can, because we know that we can make an advert, and we know that man has been on the moon. So therefore, those two things are possible. But the if is when the client says, can you put an advert on the moon? Yes, if you can afford to pay for it, because of course there's going to be a huge, probably multi-billion pound cost to do that. So
Yeah.
I think it's a great way of looking at things, because it doesn't make you say no straight away, which a lot of people tend to do as a, well, no, of course you can't do an advert on the moon. but it makes you look at how you can do it. And then it also frames it up so that your expectations are aligned with the person asking you. Because if they think you can do it for £5, but you say, yes, if you can afford it, it's going to cost you £1 billion, straight away, your expectations are aligned with that. So um, I just think it's a really nice way of looking at things rather than saying no straight away. So, if you ask me if I can do something, and I'm already pretty busy, I can say, yes, I can do this if you don't mind this project being delayed.
Yeah.
Or yes, I can do this, but it means this project isn't going to get finished. And then it puts the onus back onto you, and it makes you really choose what you think is more important. Is it this new project you're asking me to do, or is it the old project that you asked me to do? And then I'm not making the decision, you're making the decision. And then also our expectations are, again, they're aligned, because you know now that the first project is going to be delayed, rather than just frantically me trying to get both projects done and failing and you then being disappointed. So I think the yes if is a great way of looking at things.
I think that is definitely a great way of looking at things, because I think sometimes we don't want to let other people down. So we might just say yes and we'll figure the rest out later. If something ends up being a mess, it's fine. We'll just, at least we've said yes, we look good, we're going to figure the rest out later. But then what that might lead to is poor quality on some projects because you've not prioritized them as much, etc. And I think managing expectations quite early on with using yes if is just brilliant. So I really like
and
that.
also, I would much rather know at the start of the project if you're not going to be able to do it, so I can find a different solution. Then you
Yeah.
come to me the day before the deadline and say, look, I haven't done it, or this is what I've done, and I think, well, that's
Yeah.
nowhere near good enough, and now I haven't got time to do it properly. So, you end up letting the person down more by taking on too much work, I think.
Exactly. So why do you think that this yes if approach is especially important at times like this for a company like ours?
I think it just makes you more agile.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's very few things in life that are black and white. There's a huge amount of grey areas in most things. But what I think is best is to look at those grey areas earlier on, as I was just saying, and try and get them as black and white as possible. So you are managing those expectations. So as I say, if I've asked you to do a couple of projects for me and you're at capacity, and then I ask you to do another one, and you say yes, but you don't really know how you're going to do it, then there's a bit of a grey area in your mind whether you're going to get it done or not.
Mm.
If you say yes if, and you look at that, and work out, is this a project you can do in terms of your time and your value, then it becomes more black and white, it becomes more defined, and then you can give me an answer that you're completely bought into and you're going to achieve, and therefore I can feel 100% happy that that project's going to get delivered. Because if I think it's not going to be delivered, even if you've said yes and I can tell there's some doubt in your minds,
Mm.
well, then I'm not comfortable either. So I spend 2 weeks panicking whether it's going to get done. You spend 2 weeks panicking whether you're going to get it done. And actually, we could have just gone to someone else and say, well, actually, can you do this project? And they say yes, because they have got capacity. So it's just getting those expectations aligned, getting rid of the grey and making it as black and white as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, kind of now talking about the no side of things, sometimes we might find ourselves working with people who say no a lot. So, what would your advice be to both the people who are on the receiving end of the no's in terms of managing that, but then also the people who are delivering those no's constantly? And I think we've kind of covered that quite a bit now in terms of the yes if approach would be a good solution to that. So I guess my main kind of takeaway from this is kind of finding out how you would deal with it if you are on the receiving end of the no constantly. How would you approach it with that person in particular?
So, like all of these things, it's all well and good having a formula for how to deal with it, but you've got to understand the reasons first, and then it's about the education. So, I can try and, for want of a better phrase, educate you on how to deal with these situations. But if I don't understand the reason first of all that you're saying no, I could be banging my head against a brick wall.
Yeah.
Because if it's because you're too busy, that's one thing. If it's because you don't have the skills, that's another thing. If you think it could be that you think it's the wrong project for us as a company to be doing, there's a whole heap of reasons. Now, if you fundamentally think it's the wrong project for the company to be doing, and I've got this great formula and way of making you say yes, then you've just said yes to doing the wrong project for the company. So I need to understand, first of all, why are you saying no? Is it just because you're too busy, or is it because you
Yeah.
fundamentally think it's the wrong thing? Um, and then it could be that, so it could be that it could be that the reason you're saying no is because I'm asking you to do a stupid thing in the first place. It's a dumb question I asked. So you've got to look at yourself as well, and then perhaps you need to educate yourself. And why are you saying no to me? So it's understanding. Once you've got that understanding and it is all clear, then it's really important to follow that process and to get the expectations aligned. But I think sometimes people want people that will just say yes all the time because it makes them feel better and they don't have to have that argument to get them to do things. But I think that's a really, really dangerous thing. And I've always said I'm really against it. And, apologise for yet another football analogy, but there was an England manager when I was a kid. And he was the first manager that I certainly remember. England didn't qualify for a World Cup when he was manager. And I don't remember that happening in my lifetime up until that stage. But they made a documentary on his World Cup qualifying campaign, and it was probably about the first time I'd ever seen a sort of a documentary on something like that. And so Graham Taylor's the England manager, and he was a very successful manager. Obviously, that's why he became the England manager. But his assistant, I think it was Phil Neal, an ex-Liverpool player. But the whole way through this documentary, you hear him saying, "Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Yes, boss," and he never once challenged what Graham Taylor was suggesting. So that's fine if you've got the perfect solution to everything, and you've just got someone there going, "Yes, boss, that's right, boss, yes, boss." But if you're doing things the wrong way and people don't tell you that, then you just go off on a tangent, and it means you have to make the mistake before you learn. And sometimes, if you don't learn till you've made the mistake, that means you've not qualified for a World Cup finals, which is a pretty big thing to do. And as a result, he lost his job. And I remember very early on in the EMG days. One of the team on their exit interview came. We were doing an exit interview as they were leaving, and I asked what she most liked about working at EMG, and she said the fact that I can just walk into your office and tell you you're wrong. And I said, well, do you know what? That's one of the things I hate most, because this is my baby, and I set it up, and I don't like to be told wrong, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. And sometimes I might disagree with you there and then and say, well, actually, I'm not wrong, you're wrong, blah, 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 blah. Or I might just say, yeah, very good point. I hadn't thought of that. But even the times when I say you are wrong and I'm right and you're wrong, I'll go away and I quite often sleep on it, and I come back the next day and I'm like, actually, I can see why you were saying that. And yes, I do agree with you, or I still don't agree with you, but I understand why you said that. So it's so important to be challenged. So having people that say no to you is a really good thing if it's done for the right reasons. So if it's because they're just too busy and then you just need to educate them on prioritizing their time and coming up with the yes if solutions. If it's because they think you're wrong, then you need to be able to have those conversations with them, and they need to be able to trust you that if they say no, that they're saying it for the right reason. So it goes back to the 5 dysfunctions book that we've all read, 5 dysfunctions of a team. It's all built around trust. If you say no to me, I've got to trust that you're saying it for the right reason, even if you say it in a really, crappy way because you're having a bad day and you're stressed and there's loads of stuff going on in your life that I don't know about. Doesn't matter. If you say no, I know that you're saying it for the right reason. Now, if you say, and likewise, if I say, well, actually, tough luck, we're doing it. If I say that in a good way or a bad way, that I'm saying it for the right reason. So it comes back to trust. So the yes or no thing, I think a lot of this boils down to how much you trust the team. Because it's very easy if you don't trust them just to say yes to get your boss off your back sort of thing, and then it doesn't get done and it leads to problems later on. So being able to have those frank and open conversations about why it's a yes or a no and understanding those reasons, I think, is the most important thing.
I think that's really, really good, and a nice way to end this as well. So brilliant. Thank you so much, Spencer, for taking the time. And thank you for anyone who took the time to watch this. If you do have any specific topics that you'd like Spencer's thoughts and wisdom on in the future, please just get in touch and we'll try our best to accommodate that as well. Thanks again, Spencer.
Thank you, Sen. Pleasure as always.